All right, welcome to our fifth Unstoppable Women series. Today we have Kirsten Griggs, who will be interviewing Carolyn No, and we'll get Carolyn introduced here in a minute. So Kirsten Griggs is an ambassador Girl Scout. She's currently a junior in high school at Harrison County. She has earned her bronze and silver award. She's attended GEMS, I think, every year and loves it. Girls in Engineering, Math, and Science, which is a big event that we put on. And she is also the queen of all extracurriculars. She does band, FBLA, FCCLA, which is a new one I learned about today. And then she does wrestling and track as well. So this girl knows her stuff, and we're really excited. So Kirsten, I'll let you kick us off.
So, Carolyn, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I was definitely not as involved as you were in high school. I did Model UN, and that was about it. But after that, I went to Florida State University for a bachelor's in social science. And then I went to the University of Missouri, St. Louis, for a master's in museum studies. I currently don't work for a museum. I did work for a museum for about a year and decided that wasn't the life for me. And I changed tracks. I moved back to St. Louis, and I worked for an organization called the Academy of Science of St. Louis, which does a lot of outreach, like STEM outreach. So kind of like what the Girl Scouts does, but also for adults. After that, my husband and I had been dating for about 5 years, and we decided we were going to get married. But we were living in two different states, because we both graduated during the middle of the last recession. So we decided we were going to try and settle in Cincinnati. So I moved out here, worked for the University of Cincinnati for a few years, and now I work at Northern Kentucky University for the Institute for Health Innovation. In between all of that, in 2012, I founded Superheroines, etc., which is a nonprofit that focuses on empowering women to embrace their inner nerd. And they do that through a number of programs and outreach, and really focused on like equity and inclusion in nerd culture. In addition to that, I live with my husband and our two dogs, Petey and Darcy. They're both very sweet. And since I have recently moved off the board of Superheroines, etc., and I can talk a little bit about that later on. I'm currently just kind of trying to figure out what my next passion project's going to be.
What was the motivation about starting your own nonprofit organization, Superheroines, etc.?
That is a great question. So I think that, necessity is the mother of invention is one of those like cliches that gets tossed around a lot. But I graduated from college, graduated from graduate school, and when you're an adult, it is really hard to make friends. So when you're at school, like, you get to see people all the time, maybe not right now, but you start making your group of friends, right? You have all these people that are around you, and they're really cool. When you're an adult, it's really hard. You don't have school friends. So I started Superheroines actually as a meetup group, which is like a meetup.com is a website where adults try to form groups where they have common interests. So like, say you like fly fishing, you could join the fly fishing meetup group. After a while, we grew to like 1,600 members. So I knew we needed to be organized. We needed to be protected, like legally. And I knew that the fact that 1,600 people were interested in this organization, we had just started out as like a group to get together with women who had common interests, right? So we all knew we liked nerdy or geeky things, whether that was science fiction movies or books or history. There were enough people who were really interested in this that it warranted something bigger than just an interest group. And in the geek community, there are a lot of underlying issues. There are not as many women who are on screen. There are not as many women writing books. There's not as many women writing comics or drawing comics. Women are just generally underrepresented. And if you can't see it, you can't be it. So we talk a lot about, how that impacts people, women who are interested in these things. If they're not seeing themselves in that media, how does that impact them as people? So the motivation was kind of twofold. It was the fact that by necessity we needed something organized around what we were doing, but also that people really wanted this.
What was it like moving to a new city and getting involved into your community?
I have moved to a number of new cities. So I've moved to St. Louis, I've moved to Norman, Oklahoma, and I've moved to the northern Kentucky area. So I live in Newport. It is a different experience every single time. My move to Norman was really difficult because I'd never been to Oklahoma. It was really far away from everyone I knew. But I got involved there by joining some meetup groups. That was a really good way to meet other people. But moving back to St. Louis, I had my family and they were really supportive. They had also moved to St. Louis. And then moving to Cincinnati was a totally different experience. The only people I knew were my husband and my in-laws. And I love my husband, I love my in-laws. But you really need your own people, right? My in-laws don't necessarily understand my obsession with like Pride and Prejudice. So moving here, it was definitely a challenge. I was working at a new place. My husband already had all of these friends. So even though, it could be positive that I had my husband here, and it was, I enjoyed being around him. It was difficult because he had his set of friends, but I didn't have my own set of friends to pull from. So starting the Cincinnati chapter of Superheroines really helped me. And then beyond that, I mean, getting involved in my community, I follow my heart on what issues really matter to me. So voting and elections really matter to me. Criminal justice reform really matters to me. And then supporting basic needs for people is also important. And I do some of that I do something related to all of those things, either in my personal life or in my work.
I live in two cities technically, Lexington and Cynthiana, and Lexington is actually a bigger city than Cynthiana. Cynthiana is, my hometown. Mm-hmm. I love it. And going from Lexington and Cynthiana it's a culture shock to me because it's like you're around, all different types of people, all different types of personalities, and going back to Cynthiana, it's different. And being in Lexington, I really don't have a lot of friends there. And Cynthiana, I have more friends here, and it's a lot to adjust to. And
absolutely. I actually grew up in South Florida, which is very different than the Midwest, very different from Oklahoma, even different from where I went to school in Tallahassee, Florida, which is sort of the Panhandle area. And you have to be a little adaptable, and you have to kind of find things that make you happy in those places, I think.
My mom and I actually wanted to start our own nonprofit organizations for women in the workforce. Mm-hmm. What would your advice be to people who want to start their own nonprofit organization?
I have a lot of advice about that. So one thing is I highly recommend finding some of the online communities of folks who are involved in nonprofit work. There are a couple like Facebook groups. Definitely getting into those groups and kind of asking questions is a great place to start. I think a lot of times in those groups, though, just as like a disclaimer, most people who work in nonprofits don't encourage people to start their own nonprofits. And the reason is that there's already a lot of nonprofits out there. A lot of them are doing some really important work. And it may already be related to what you're doing. And if you start another nonprofit, you could be taking away money from them, right? Mm-hmm. So, but, keep that in mind. But then if you are in your community and you see that there's a specific need, that is not being fulfilled by a nonprofit that does similar work in your area, then I say it's really important that you start that nonprofit and you do that work, right? So definitely do your research. Think about what you want to do first. With that, think about what is your mission? What are your goals? I definitely recommend going to the library and checking out every single book you can on nonprofits. That's what I did. I love libraries, so that really helped. And the librarians there are really smart. In most areas, there's also a special section at like one of your main libraries that's dedicated specifically to nonprofits and helping you get started. Also helping you get grants, learning how to apply for money. And so you can get a lot of resources there. I think what really scares a lot of people, and it shouldn't, is that there's a lot of legality to starting a nonprofit, right? So if you don't know all the like cool, legal info, you feel like totally adrift and that you don't know what you're doing. Really big tip. Most major universities in this country have a law school, and those law schools have a clinic for small businesses and nonprofits. And they are often looking for nonprofits to help so that their students can learn how to do things. So I've never hired a lawyer, but I've always had a lawyer. And these students have helped me apply to become, for our nonprofit status. They've helped us draft our bylaws. They've helped us create our articles of incorporation, all that like super boring, legal mumbo jumbo. They can help. And I say this as someone who is married to a lawyer. So I can say it's super boring. But, you definitely rely on the resources in your community. You might be surprised by what's available. And then once you get your legal stuff together, once you have an idea of what your mission is, the next thing you're going to have to do is find a board. And those are people who are supportive of your organization, whether that's financially or through donating their volunteer time. It all kind of depends on how you structure your organization and what you want that board to do for you. But make sure that they are smart people who are going to add something to help you understand what your organization is doing and can help support all of those efforts. Sometimes it's nice to have a lawyer or an accountant on the team, but it can also be equally as nice to have someone who's like, for us, like an expert in comic books, someone who has really cool connections. So it sounds like a lot. It can be a lot, but there's so many resources out there on the internet and at the library that you can pretty much figure out how to do it. And then with the support of that legal group at whatever university you contact, you'll be pretty set to go.
What was it like starting the Cincinnati chapter of heroines, etc.?
So starting the Cincinnati chapter was like 10 times easier than starting your own nonprofit. Because we already had our nonprofit status, one of the things you have to do is go through the IRS and explain why you should be a nonprofit and why you should be tax exempt. Because as citizens of the United States, we all pay taxes, businesses pay taxes. We were not going to be making any money. We were not going to be doing anything other than benefiting the society that we were in. So we qualified as a nonprofit. We just used the nonprofit status that we had and basically took all the lessons that we learned from starting the group in St. Louis. So there are things we did right in St. Louis. There are things we didn't do so right. And when we came to Cincinnati, we thought, all right, how can we do what we did well in St. Louis and learn from that and grow? So one of the first things I did is just started hosting what we called kind of like our bread and butter events, which were we called Learn a Game. And that was where we taught people how to play a new game. Very, very simple educational type event. And then we just kind of grew from there. I built a really supportive group of volunteers. I think that's really important. Added to our board. And now, since I've stepped down, our board president is actually someone who lives in Cincinnati. So it's not someone who lives in St. Louis where the group was founded, which is pretty cool.
Well, in Cincinnati, where I'm from, we actually are notorious for The Walking Dead. Robert Kirkman is the creator of The Walking Dead is actually from Cincinnati, and so is Tony Moore. He did the illustrations for Deadpool comics.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is pretty cool. And the comic, The Walking Dead comic, actually takes place in Cincinnati, which is also pretty cool.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I don't really like horror, but I'll have to check it out now.
Who was a mentor for you, and what would you advise young women looking for a mentor?
This is a really important question. I think there's a lot of information out there about how everyone needs a mentor, and you have to find a mentor right now, and if you don't find a mentor, you're never going to find a mentor. You know, there's just it's like very stress-inducing, right? Mm-hmm. So someone who was a mentor for me is someone who was my internship manager when I worked at the Missouri Botanical Garden. And she eventually struck out on her own, and she started her own nonprofit as well. So she was actually about 6 months ahead of me when I was going through my process of turning superheroines into a nonprofit. So I could kind of follow along with what she was doing. But I honestly think that rather than having like one person, one mentor, I tend to have more of like a board of directors for my life. And I have a lot of people that I talk to who I consider mentors, whether they're similar in age to me, so they're more like peer mentors, or my boss, who is really amazing. I think of her as a mentor. And I mean, sometimes my mom and my grandma are also my mentors. Just kind of depends on like what aspect of my life I need advice in. I think the advice that I can give to young women is don't look for the like unicorn, most perfect, amazing mentor. Look for a lot of people in your life who you can trust and ask for advice. And then when you get into a position where you can offer advice, be a mentor to someone else too.
Mm-hmm. Actually, we were talking about this in class one day. It was like, who are teenagers who actually, who you thought had a good influence in your life? And when I was younger, I would always watch TV. I like to watch music videos a lot. So me personally, I looked up to more celebrities, mm-hmm. like Taylor Swift, and I really look forward to Beyonce too. Looked up to Beyonce because she's like one of my favorites. I love Beyonce. So that's just something that, you know, really when it comes to my mentoring, it's like I looked up to a lot of people that were celebrities for me personally. I think
that's okay to have people who, you know, you don't want to go up and ask someone, will you be my mentor? That's kind of, you're like, But, you know, if you have people that you look up to and have inspiring messages, that can be part of your group of folks who give you advice and information. I mean, Beyonce was actually super popular when I was your age too. So, you know, she's been in my life for over a decade, and I definitely listen to her music and her lyrics as something that inspires me.
Mm-hmm. How do you motivate yourself and stay motivated?
This is such a great question. I'm really internally motivated, so I like to kind of compete with myself and, you know, do better the next time. But one of the things that really motivates me is writing down my goals and then using that to plan out what I'm doing. So rather than just saying like, all right, my goal this year is to walk the dogs every day or something, you know, or help the dogs get fit. That's one of the big things. My dogs are supposed to lose weight this year. So one of the things I might do is add to my to-do list on one day, you know, walk the dogs. Next week, my next to-do list might be, all right, look at the food package and make sure I'm feeding them what they're supposed to be fed. So rather than just say I have this lofty plan of what I'm going to do, actually make a list of all the ways that I'm going to get to that goal. And that definitely helps me stay motivated. I mean, competition always helps, you know. Telling my friends that I'm doing also helps. You know, they're just very supportive and uplifting, you know, to have someone say, oh, that's really great, that's what you're doing, here's what I'm doing, and then you guys can talk back and forth about all the cool stuff that's going on. So definitely don't doubt the like support of your friends.
One thing that was really big for me, that really helped me stay motivated, especially with like COVID, we couldn't play sports. We couldn't do any type of extracurricular activities. And one thing for me that helped me stay motivated is going back in my closet. I actually have like this box of my medals and trophies I had. And that's one thing, just looking at that and just saying, hey, I did that. You know, and I want to keep doing it and keep going forward with my sports and extracurricular activities. That really helped me motivate myself.
Yeah, I actually have a wall over by my downstairs in my office that just has like all these things that I've done or things that people have sent me. You know, I have like a plaque from when I spoke on a panel at a convention I really wanted to go to. So those things are, yeah, I mean, looking at all of your past accomplishments can be super motivating.
Mm-hmm. What do you do for relaxation and mental health?
Yeah, that's a good question. My husband and I really like to watch TV. So we watched a lot of the Great British Bake Off recently. um, we also play a lot of board games and role-playing games, and we are actually doing this all online. We are currently playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons online, and then we're playing Gloomhaven, which is kind of like a role-playing game, but it's a board game version of that. And then I have an all-girl role-playing group that I'm in, and we are playing as grannies, like grandmas, who solve mysteries,
Wow.
supernatural mysteries. And I'm playing this with some friends from across the country. That's a really big way for me, especially during COVID. You know, I know we're all kind of Zoom fatigued, or tired of looking at screens, but doing something totally different online can be, you know, totally relaxing. I also like to cuddle my dogs and play Animal Crossing. I mean, honestly, I play a lot of games to relax.
One thing that really helped me, especially like being during lockdown and during COVID, I love to write, and um, I used to write all the time when I was in elementary school, but then I picked it up as um after COVID. I literally like picked it up. I don't know, like it just happened right after blue. I was like, you know what, today I think I'm gonna write something.
That's
And
Yeah, I made some zines during COVID. I called them my corn zines.
mhm.
And then I write some poetry. I don't know if it's any good, but I write it.
I went to having a book maybe this thick, and I literally almost finished covered the whole thing.
That's awesome.
And I just go outdoors. I love being outdoors. I love like just being able to breathe outside and get the fresh air, not being inside the house all day.
Absolutely. I used to sit on my porch and read during the nice days, but now it's a little too cold for that.
Yeah. Um, is there a gender gap within your work? If so, how did you face that?
Yeah. So in geek culture, there's a huge gender gap. It's getting better. Um, I think some of the issues are just outright sexism and misogyny, and that is just there's a lot of people who grew up enjoying this kind of stuff. So people who grew up watching Star Wars or reading comics, and they all kind of look similar. So all the folks who do look, generally they're white men who were young in the 80s and thought that this was something, like, they were made fun of for thinking these things are cool. So there's some gatekeeping. I don't know if you all know what gatekeeping is, but it's those folks who think they own this genre, trying to keep other people like us out of liking it because they feel like they own it, like it's really important to them, right? And that's just like kind of a subset, but they can be a really loud voice in the industry and the geek culture, and they can make it really hard for those of us who grew up or have just discovered, like, there is no geek test. And I think that's something that's really important that everyone should know. You can like Star Wars and not be able to quote it. You can like comics or like comic movies and never have actually read a comic book. You can read only indie comics. You can read only mainstream comics. Like, no one should test your knowledge of geek culture. And that happens a lot. That happens, people will be like, well, if you like Star Wars, then what does Boba Fett say to Han Solo? And it's like, no, there's no reason for that, right? Mm-hmm. You can like what you like at any level, and you can call yourself a geek, and that's fine. And it just makes it something that we have to work hard on to change. And it's sad that it's sort of fallen to all the folks out in the world who are, the ones where people are trying to gatekeep. But that's why Superheroines, etc. exists, is that we are trying to tell people this is not okay. You cannot gatekeep us. You need more women. You need more BIPOC folks. You need to have better representation of LGBTQ folks in our media, because we're not there. And when we are there, we're a very small part of it. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you can turn on any superhero movie. Like, what we got, the Wonder Woman movie. She was the first female superhero, right? Superhero movie. How long has Wonder Woman existed?
A very long time.
Yeah. And so, and then you get that kind of backlash where people are like, well, now you've got your one superhero movie, should be fine. That doesn't represent our culture. That doesn't represent who we are as a country, as a world. And so we should be pushing back. We should be asking for better representation. And part of that starts with the pipeline. That starts with folks like you, folks like me, coming up with our own content. It goes to the next level of getting more women into the majors in college, where they can learn how to do some of these things, become a filmmaker, become a comic artist, go into STEM, all these fields where women are already underrepresented, and then, getting into those careers. And then one of the issues is, once you get into those careers, you're still facing some of the same sexism and misogyny. And so trying to change the culture of these organizations so that you feel comfortable, so that everyone else feels comfortable, so that there's better representation, and it just keeps going. So it's a really long path. It's at every single level, and the best thing that we can do is just keep pushing back and fighting, because things are not going to change unless we say this is not acceptable anymore.
And I dealt with that a little bit, because I have friends that love comics. They love Star Wars, love like everything. And I personally got bullied for it, because I would like go try to watch Star Wars, try to catch up, and they'd be like, oh, well, then who's this person? If you're not a true Star Wars fan if you don't like this, or you're not a true whatever if you don't like this. And
you know what's funny is, at your age, I was reading like every single Star Wars book known to man, and I was made fun of for reading all of those books. So there's like literally no winning with that kind of culture. And you should just enjoy what you enjoy, be a geek at your own pace, watch a Star Wars movie, and you know what? Tell them that's not cool. For them to try and keep you away from something that's enjoyable and fun. One of the things that we talk about in like tabletop gaming is that this is our leisure time and this is fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we play games, sometimes there's really difficult content. You know, I think that in games you have to set boundaries so that everyone can still have fun and enjoy it, right? So that's another place where some of that sexism comes to the forefront. And I've definitely experienced it in my own gaming. And that's why I kind of prefer to game mostly within an all women group. And that's why people will get into gaming and then leave. So one of the things that you might have experienced is you're like, all right, I want to watch the Star Wars movie, and then everyone's making me feel bad for like not having watched them before. Well, why should I watch them now, right? So we all have to, as a community, push back on that. And you know, I personally think that the people who are doing that should just stop, right? And we're gonna say, you know, this is not cool. You should not be doing this. But you also have to walk your own path and say, I'm going to watch it anyway, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of both and. It's like push back on those people. They need to change. You do your own thing at the same time.
And I did want to mention, I know this is a little off topic, but our school actually started to have our first women's wrestling team. It used to be all men. It's a boys sport. It used to be a boys sport, and we did it. There's actually more girls on the team than there was boys on the team. And when it first started, I think there was probably like 2 women on that team, and that was it. And now we have a whole team, probably 20 plus women on it, and we actually were the first KHSAA state champs for wrestling.
That's amazing.
And that's something I wanted to say.
Well, you already know how hard it is to fight for these things. So definitely just keep using that motivation to push back on things that you don't think are fair.
And you know, I hear people all the time like say, "Oh, wrestling's a boys' sport. You shouldn't be wrestling. You're a girl. Women should be doing their makeup and all that stuff." Like it's stuff like that like really irritates me. Like this is 2020. No one should be doing that.
No,
it's ridiculous.
No one should be doing that at all.
It's ridiculous.
It's a huge challenge that, you know, you think that it's stuff that you see on TV of like old movies or whatever, but it's still happening every single day. And as you get older, I wish I could say, you know, that stuff goes away, but you're learning the skills now. And I think that all of the folks who are older than you are also trying to make it better for you. So we just have to keep trying to make it better for each other, I think is the best that we can do, and demand change. And this kind of gets a little off topic, but policy change is one of the best ways that we can impact. And I'm sure Rachel Roberts talked a little bit about this, but policy change at the state and the local and the federal level can really make a big impact. And I think asking for organizational change. So one of the things that Superheroines has done is put pressure on Cincinnati Comic Expo to do certain things, like bring in more women as guest presenters. We've also asked other like conventions to update their like anti-harassment policies. A lot of them have some really wonky ones that don't actually make it easy for women or anyone to report harassment at conventions. And then a lot of times they don't even take action to change it. And so you have to also push at this like institutional level, which can be a little bit scary, but when you have a coalition like you do with, you know, like your friends or people that you've met along the way through going through Girl Scouts, you know, I think we can really change the world.
Okay. Working with NKU, how do you empower new students to get engaged on campus and their community?
Yeah, it's really hard right now because most of everything that we're doing is virtual. But one of the projects that I started at NKU is called the Care Closet. I don't know if you all are familiar with our Fuel NKU program. It's our food pantry. It's for any student on campus who is facing food insecurity. So maybe they don't have enough money to buy groceries and pay rent. Or maybe they moved out of their parents' house and they didn't realize how much it would cost to live on their own. But anyone is welcome to shop at Fuel NKU and get food. I was meeting with a lot of people on campus, and they were all saying, you know, our students, they can't afford food. How are they going to afford business suits for interviews? Or how are they going to afford jeans to go to class? So we're working with a group here in Newport called the Care Closet, and they're kind of working with our campus community. We're starting our own closet on NKU's campus. And students have really been leading the way in terms of, they've helped us do some pop-up shops. They have sorted all of the clothing for us. We have like 6 pallets of clothing on campus right now, just hiding in the basement across campus. It's really weird, but cool. And so they'll go down into the basement next to the boiler and like fold all the clothes for us. So we've really been trying to get students to get engaged that way. And one of the projects that I'm working on for the upcoming year is there's a program called Art Plus Feminism. It's a Wikipedia edit-a-thon it's primarily oriented toward women artists. But I'm going to take that and do it about women who are in medicine, since I work for the Institute for Health Innovation. And I'm encouraging our students on campus and then our students that we work with in our K through 12 programs to edit Wikipedia, learn how to do that. I'm sure everyone has been on Wikipedia before, right? And so you use that as a resource. I'm going to teach you all how to edit that resource and understand why it's so important to have sources to back up your information. And then also just have more articles that are about women in medicine, which I think is really cool.
Something that our school does, now where we used to pay like maybe like $3 to get lunch, our school and district actually give us free lunch. And
that's great.
And they deliver our lunches and meals throughout the week. I think every Sunday, and that's something I really appreciate.
Yeah, we've not been able to do that on our campus, but we do have like a table set up when we're in the time when we're not able to really interact with people. They'll set up a table for kids to come pick up their groceries. So I think Fuel is a really amazing program, and it was started by a woman on campus, and without her starting that program on campus, I wouldn't have been able to really start my care closet to provide the clothing, right? So it's really about women kind of blazing the trail and doing something that can help the next person do the next cool thing.
It's just unfortunate that we have so many people. I mean, it's unreal that like we have so many people that struggle to like just to like pay bills and just to get food on their table. It's just unreal. And
it's a big issue.
We were really fortunate to get a grant that will let us to do that. Really, really fortunate. I think this is one of the last questions. Well, actually, I think we might have another one, but what advice would you give girls going to college next year?
I think that college next year, I'm hoping we all have a COVID vaccine by then. I really do. But I want to let you know that you can do hard things. It may be really different than what you're expecting it to be. And we're seeing that happen on campus right now, where students are really struggling. And I'm sure you're seeing students in your high school who are also having the same issues, kind of keeping up with classes. But I think that the most important thing is that you're resilient, that you have a lot of resources in your community to help you. And I also think that it's okay to be an undeclared major. One of the things that we keep telling students is pick your path early, figure out what you want to do, get all your your credits in order, one of the programs I run is called Teen Science Cafe, and we try to bring in scientists who have kind of like this weird path to where they went. Maybe they got C's in high school and then they found their passion in college. Maybe they went back to school. We have this one woman in neuroscience who went back to school in middle age and got her PhD, and now she's like a really cool neuroscientist. College is a place to understand who you are, understand how you learn, what you like learning. It's also a place to learn how to think. People who go to college have much better health outcomes later on in life too. So there are a lot of benefits to going to college that aren't necessarily just get a job. You know, I got a degree in museum studies, and I do not work in a museum. So it's okay to not really know what you want to do, and figure it out later on. But definitely, you know, work hard in college, meet a lot of people, try a lot of things. I can't tell you how many like weird things you do in college just to like try them out, you know. It's a fun place. It's a great time to reinvent yourself or to just be who you are.
I changed my mind a whole lot about what I was gonna do when I go to college, and I'm honestly like, I'm scared of like, okay, I'm gonna go with this path, but then I get into it and it's like, you know what, I don't want to do it. I don't really like it. That's not really something I want to do, and it's kind of nerve-wracking almost.
I think
Like
the most important thing is that you do go to college. I think it's less important to know exactly what you want to do before you get there. You're going to have a lot of intro courses. I know APs cover a lot of that stuff now, but you're going to end up in a couple intro courses, and you're going to get to try a couple different things. I mean, I took like an anthropology course. I took so many weird things in college. That's where I learned that I really liked museums, and I got a minor in museum studies there. You know, I took political philosophy, and I got my first C ever. I learned that I was not going to be a political philosopher. You know, you get to try and learn a lot of things. If you have a general idea of what direction you're going to go, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. You also get a wider variety of classes in college than you do in high school. So like we have a medical sociology class. That's not something you're going to take in high school. You probably have never taken a sociology class before, so you don't know if you're going to like sociology because you've never done anything with sociology, right? So definitely take a wide variety of stuff and see what you like, see what you don't like. And also, the end of college is not the end of everything. I think a lot of folks think that your path is set as soon as you graduate. Like, I have my degree in marketing for business, and that's it. I am only going to do that ever. You have so much life ahead of you. You get to do all sorts of cool stuff. Like, just follow your heart, follow your passion. You know, try new things. You know, college isn't the end all. I think it's important to go. I think you need to go. I work for a university, so of course I'm going to say that. But personally, I agree with that. It's probably one of the most fun 4 years I ever had. But don't be afraid to try stuff.
All right. If anybody has any questions, you can pop them in the chat log, or feel free to unmute yourself. But we'll hang out for a couple minutes. Thank you all so much for joining. We are, again, happy to answer any other questions. Our next Unstoppable Women is not until January, so we'll be getting information out about that. Next time we talk for this series, it'll be 2021. Happy holidays. Thank you all.
Hey, oh wait, hold on.
Okay.
Actually, it's Laura.
Hi,
I actually
Laura.
have a question. I have a question about the science program you were talking about. How'd you reach out to those, like the people that help you with it?
The Teen Science Cafe?
Yes.
So we use a lot of our NKU faculty for that. But I ran that program in St. Louis at the Academy of Science, and there's a national network of folks So if you were ever interested in starting something like that, I can help you get connected to like the national folks too.
Okay. All right. So I'd be able to find like local people
Oh yeah.
for a program to help me with science stuff, because science is not my strong suit.
What area of Kentucky are you in?
I'm in Lexington,
Okay,
Kentucky.
I know there's a teen cafe in Louisville. That's why I asked.
Oh, okay. Nice. All right. Well, good to know. I might be in contact with you.
Yeah, definitely.
So one thing that I didn't think to mention earlier, the Health Innovation Center in NKU, Carolyn works for. Carolyn actually helps us set up, well, not now because of COVID, but set up tours. So Girl Scouts can actually go do programs at NKU in the Health Innovation Center to see what the students are learning and experience the whole thing. Hopefully we can get back to that at some point.
Yeah, we have everything from birth to death to everything in between with our mannequins. They can simulate just about every single possibility, which is kind of amazing.
Led by students. All right, I'm gonna stop